Alright, the camera's on again, so let's dive into question 4, or section 4, I should say. Determining whether SIPs are right for you. Let's start with the question, what will SIPs do for me as a homeowner?
That's going to be answered with a question.
Yes.
How much money do you want to save?
As much as possible.
Okay, well, here's the thing. SIPs are maybe a little bit more expensive when you compare material to material. But in a sense, they're not, because the money that you pay to have them made in the factory is money that you're going to spend more time out in the field assembling it and putting every component together. You have your SIPs contractor, you have your insulation, not SIPs contractor, your general contractor framing the walls, you got your electrician doing his drilling and conduit work and box installation, and then you have your insulation guy coming in and doing his part.
Right.
So all that stuff is done in the field in a typical house, and you're at the whim and mercy of the weather. And then
And scheduling
and
of
scheduling
contractors.
versus you can have the SIPs made in factory in a controlled environment, and then they can actually sit there until your job site is ready.
Okay.
So there's no lost time. The contractor says, I'm ready, and the only thing that's going to delay him is the weather.
Okay.
Now, that's the savings part of just the construction, which comes out to almost nothing when you consider the higher cost of shipping something a little bit, getting the SIP out there. But then, that's the product. It doesn't ever break down. It doesn't change. Not like your...
So there's no aging in this, which I think
No
you
aging.
touched on earlier a little bit.
And there's roughly a 5-year return on investment. So you spend, say the price difference, if you would get a frame wall up versus a SIP wall, you spend $10,000 more on the SIP. In 5 years, or less in this case, in that number I threw out there, less than 5 years you'll have your money back. But then you're not just going to say, okay, now I'm broke even. You'll continue to save money. You'll save money. You'll save money. And the energy savings can be as high as 80% compared to traditional stick-built houses.
Wow.
So if you have a 200, or let's go with round numbers here, $100 electric bill just for your heating, you're going to possibly $20 to $30 electric bill.
Wow.
So that's, and multiply that every month out by years and years and years.
Yeah, you're more than paying. I mean, you're getting a return on investment. In other words, say even if you would only be saving 20%, you would still continue. Good. Okay, very interesting. Are there downsides? Like, we know there's no perfect thing in the world in one sense. Are there any downsides to building with SIPs, or what are some of the complaints that, actually let me say it this way, have you run into any complaints from people that have purchased from you, or that you know of, that have built them in other cases?
No downsides per se, except the only thing that's going to be an extra step in the process is just comparing the drawings. The actual design of the home versus the production drawings from the factory, to make sure they're going to be well set up, that they're matching perfectly with rough openings and window sizes. Everything's in place, and then just there's a couple extra people involved in scheduling. You know, there's me. I'll contact the manufacturers, okay, I need house number A delivered such and such a day. Weather happens, hold it, let's push it off a week and see what it does. Other than that, it's pretty much the same thing.
Interstate shipping is not a problem. I mean, of course, there's costs involved, but that, with the scheduling as well, is easily worked out. It's nothing, so it doesn't have to be local.
In all the years I've been doing this, we've delivered every house on the exact day that it was supposed to be delivered.
Okay, that's great. And this was briefly touched on, but it's here. Maybe there's another angle that you haven't touched on yet. But what is the long-term effect of building with SIPs? Is there any long-term effect that you haven't detailed already with the return on investment?
Peace of mind.
Okay.
The thing that will come to mind most is the fact of it's 2 to 3 times stronger than your neighbor's house. So if a hurricane hits, case in point, there was one that went through Hurricane Michael. and the family decided to stay in the house. They didn't evacuate. The hurricane went from a Category 5 down to a 4 just before it touched land, and they said, well, if it's Category 5, we're leaving, but if it's down to Category 4, we're going to stay. And they said they hardly felt the house shift at all.
And was that decision based on the knowledge that they had a SIPS house? And the extra strength there?
Yes.
Wow, yeah, wow, that's gutsy, but I guess it was a calculated risk, if you will.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
Just for the sake of it doesn't stop stuff from hitting your windows and going through, but it's still, they decided to stick it out. And
there was no damage. Now that's not saying there won't be hurricanes that would, but in that case a Category 4 did not affect the home. Wow, impressive. What are some of the main differences between SIPS products themselves that are out there, comparing SIPS to SIPS? I know you talked a bit about the EPS versus the polyurethane that you use. Are there other differences that...
Yeah, the polyurethane has an R value of 6.9 per inch.
Okay.
Which is why we can get an R24 out of a 4-inch wall.
4-inch wall, okay.
The EPS, the expanded polystyrene, has an R value of 3.5.
So it's half.
So to get that R24 value, you need a 6.5-inch panel. But the difference that comes into play there is with the windows and door jambs. With the 4-inch panel that we provide, you don't need the extra extension jamb for the extra width on the wall. So there's no extra cost there.
Okay.
There's a savings, but most EPS foam panels also require that you provide your own 2x framing to cut out the openings. Sometimes they cut the openings out, but they don't put the reinforcing framing in with the 2x4s.
Okay.
So the homeowner has to provide all that as an added cost.
So yours have the window bucks, what they call bucks, all in and ready to go.
Yep, okay. There's no
extension jams needed in the 4-inch wall.
Nope.
Okay. Now what about the 6.5? That would, of course,
standard. You need the extension jams.
Okay. That's good to know, because a lot of areas are able to build with the 4-inch as well. Okay, good.
Now there are limitations, but just to touch on this, anything above 10 feet high on walls, we have to go to 6.5-inch.
That's a good point.
Just for the wind loads. And anything higher than that, we calculate every job specifically.
Like the one we recently did, we needed the 8-inch because it was like a 22-foot wall or something like that. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, now as we've been looking at determining whether SIPs are right for you, now there's another question that I think is very relevant for diving in a final consideration for the homeowners to make a choice with, Larry, and that is, what are some basic but effective guidelines for choosing the right SIPs? I know you touched on differences like EPS foam versus polyurethane and that whole angle, but what are some other things that they should be considering as they look at making a purchase for their own home if they decide that this is really a good fit for them?
Number one, I always say, is customer support. Anybody that buys SIPs off of me, for instance, they can call me, they can question me, they can, I know the drawings inside out, so I can tell them what works best in this situation for that specific size wall or anything like that. But beyond that is what's included, because like I mentioned before, we have the caulk, we have the foam stripping, we have the screws, we have the sill plates. Everything that's needed to put this package together on site is on the truck when it shows up. Other companies, and I'm not going to name any names, I really don't know any off the top of my head right now.
Just do their own research.
They just, do your own research, but you have to figure out your connecting splines included, which we don't need connecting splines. Ours are tongue and groove format. The projection from one panel sticks into the groove of the other.
Okay.
So there's no extra part needed at that point.
Okay.
Other companies have butt joints on their SIPs where every joint comes together. They have little wooden splines that slip into the foam grooves to keep air from transferring through the joint.
But it would still be a heat transfer when there's thermal bridges a little bit?
Not necessarily, because it's kind of put in the center of the foam or on the edge of the foam, either inside or outside the panel. So the thermal bridge is not a problem, but the biggest thing is your window and door butts like we mentioned. Some panels just come out as 4x8 sheets, and you have to do all the cutting. You have to do all the connecting, spline insertion, all the 2x framing work in the window and door openings in the field, and that all adds up to a bunch of labor. You know, they gotta measure twice, cut once, or if you mess it up, then you have a panel that you're gonna have to fix and fill in with foam if you cut it wrong. Versus if you get the panels that are pre-cut in the factory and you verify everything with the panel drawings before they're made, then everything is taken care of for you. The other thing that's a big factor is a warranty. You know, we offer a limited lifetime warranty with the panels. Now that comes with a stipulation. You have to put in what they call a heat exchanger in your ductwork system, which draws fresh air into the house and moves stale air out to keep the humidity level at an even ground at a certain percentage based on your environment. But just to keep fresh air going, because stale air can work against any type of construction, not just SIPs.
So the stale air would do what, create mold, or?
It would allow the humidity to build up a little bit, maybe.
Humidity buildup.
Yeah, and then when you have higher humidity, you have more problems with
moisture.
anything. Yeah, with moisture. But again, the polyurethane foam in the panels that I sell are mold resistant. So that part is kind of nullified, but it is a requirement for that heat exchanger in order to have the limited lifetime warranty be active.
And help me out here a little bit. The heat exchanger and the air, what causes that to be necessary, whereas in other homes perhaps not?
Airflow.
Okay.
These SIPs are so tight that you need to have fresh air come into the home, or your oxygen level can actually drop. So you need to have that fresh oxygen supply coming in. There was a case where a family was on vacation. The house was a SIP home, and there was some electrical problem in the wall, in an interior wall in the bedroom, and it started a fire. Well, all the family found when they got home was a scorched area on the wall, because the oxygen was, there was oxygen in the home to allow the fire to start, but then the SIP home was so tight that the fire that was there used up the oxygen pretty quickly, and it self-extinguished. And it was just a great thing to have a SIP home in that case.
Because it kept it from burning down, kept it from going anywhere. Okay, so not that it's a bad thing that you need an air exchange, it's just a factor to help for the health of the home.
The health of the environment, yes. And the other thing is, the benefit of having a SIP home is more and more places are requiring a blower door test, which is actually a tightness test.
In even regular homes?
In even regular homes. Which means most builders now have to caulk all the sheeting joints on the panels, not on the panels, but on their exterior wall sheeting.
Oh wow.
And make sure all the windows and doors jambs are caulked to keep the airflow from happening. And I forget what the exact numbers are, but whenever there's a SIP home involved, it passes the test every time.
Without the caulking, without
No, you got to do that as a standard thing anyway, but you don't have to pay special attention to all your sheeting joints and everything.
Right.
Because the connection factor is right there. It's
already taken care of. Okay. And do you know roughly what an air exchanger might cost, just for the homeowners or viewers to throw that in the mix as their evaluating budgets and what it might?
I think it's about $600 depending on the brand. It might be a little bit more.
Okay.
$600 to $800 for the product itself, then installation cost on top of that. Yeah, so you're looking at overall maybe $1,200 to have it installed, including the cost of the product.
Okay.
Yeah.
Small price to pay perhaps in the
Oh, yeah.
long term picture of what the home does.
Absolutely.
Alright. What about, this may not be a guideline for evaluation, but maybe, but what about when it comes to building, and like we talked about earlier with, it's good enough that even new builders can do it without a problem. Like, is there any support for them? Like, does anything come with that'll help them, with the package that'll help them build it, that they can feel comfortable with that? Like, what's the evaluation there when they're comparing different companies' products?
Two things. We provide detailed assembly drawings. There's each panel on the drawing is numbered in coordination with the panel that's actually on the pile on the truck.
Okay.
And they can unload them in sequence and get them ready to set up in sequence like that. And the most important thing is probably the one size fits all instruction manual. It's an 86-page manual that covers everything from setting the panels on concrete floors to typical wood subfloors to roof panel framing to attaching them to the ridge plate, the ridge beams,
So all kinds of different
all
scenarios.
kinds of different stuff.
So it's not like they gotta use a microscope or, magnifying glass to read all the fine print. It's a lot of diagrams and
A
things.
lot of diagrams. It's an easy read. It's not really what I would consider coffee table material, but
Right.
for a builder, he can look at the diagram and go, yeah, that's simple. I can do that.
And not every case may be used in a project, but it's there
No.
in case it's needed. Just
Absolutely. They have to pick and
reference.
choose what's relevant.
Okay, thank you.